Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to another Freethought in Florida. Freethought in Florida is a production of the Atheist community of Polk County, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I'm Sarah Ray, one of the directors of the ACPC. While we're watching the COVID-19 cases rise again, the board has been having the conversation about when we might shut down again on our own events. But for now, we are still running a couple of community service programs that we want you to know about. On Saturday mornings, we have a team that works with Street Warriors of Central Florida, packing up and handing out meals to people experiencing homelessness in downtown Lakeland. Every other Saturday morning, we volunteer to deliver boxes of food to folks throughout the county who have been affected by COVID-19 and are unable to access traditional services with a program called It Takes a Village. And then on Sunday mornings, we're in Auburndale working on our adopter road. It's 2.2 miles of Old Dixie Highway and Fussell's Corner. So there's still lots of things to do that are socially distanced that you can come out and help out with. And we're trying to take care of people in this time of need. If you're interested in joining any of these events, you can find all the details on Facebook and Meetup or at polkatheists.org. And you don't have to be a member or even an atheist to come to our events, but please wear your mask. And let's just work together to do some good in our communities. Today's guest is another community leader who's partnered with the It Takes a Village Coalition, Cathy Robinson Pickett. Cathy is, among many wonderful things, a motivational speaker and the founder and director of Friends Together. Cathy, welcome to Freethought in Florida.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for agreeing to spend a little time with me today.
I'm excited.
So let's start. You are just a book of stories, and I want to hear all of them. So let's start with, start wherever you want to start, but I want to hear about you and your journey and what sort of led you into this community service that you do.
Okay, so well, I'm 54, and I've lived a life that probably is about 10 lifetimes worth of people's general lives, for sure. But my activist life started accidentally, really, if you really want to think about it in those kinds of terms, or accidentally is not a good way, I guess. But anyway, I was diagnosed with HIV in 1991. So a very long time ago, but I was infected July 4th, 1984. So 36 years next week.
Wow.
That I've been living with HIV. I was robbed and raped and infected, and in a time where HIV didn't even have the name HIV, plus was only a white gay man's disease. So I recovered from the sexual assault and the trauma and the violence of what I went through went on to get married and, finished college, teaching degree, et cetera, et cetera. And was actually diagnosed when I was 6 months pregnant with my second child, Garrett, who is now 20, will be 29 in a very short time and going to be a daddy. I'm going to be a grandma for the
Oh,
first.
wow.
I'm so excited. And I have a daughter, Lindsay, who's fixing to turn 30. So I feel really old these days. But both of my children are not infected with HIV. So that's the greatest part of the whole story. They're amazing activists and adults themselves with great careers. I'm so proud to have lived to see them grow up. But my life transitioned really fast after our diagnosis. You might guess that there wasn't a school district that was going to want to touch me with a 10-foot pole to teach. My husband at the time, Dan, we had been a couple since college. So basically, we've been infected the same amount of time. But he didn't handle things so well, and our marriage ended pretty rapidly. And my second husband came into my life, who many people in your arena know and knew well and loved very much, Steve Pickett. Steve was much older than me and a white gay man who fell in love with me, and we rocked the Polk County area and the Central Florida gay and lesbian community with this coming out of the closet into a straight relationship thing. Because I gotta always do things big. And Steve was an amazing man, was not HIV positive, the love of my life, the dad to my children. But life is not always fair. And in 2005, he was killed in a car accident. Life has moved on. I have husband number 3. I call him the current husband. I was calling him the new husband, but we've been married 10 years. So he's like, can you think of another term? I'm like, how about
the new has worn off.
The new has worn off.
Yeah.
The current husband, might as well put this out there, given your community base, is also a white gay man that fell in love with me. One of my first medical professionals, actually, when I was diagnosed with HIV. Fired him from that job because we didn't see eye to eye. But years later, he's made a really awesome husband. And we live in Fort Myers now. And that's that. But the crest of our story and our activism, the beginning days of my work was to change laws in the state of Florida. The men that sexually assaulted me, there were 3. 2 of them went to prison. 1 was never caught. Anyway, one of them died in jail with HIV before I was ever married the first time. And at that time, the law in Florida said no matter what the crime, rape, child molestation, or sexual assault, the victim of the crime was not notified the attacker status unless the attacker gave their permission. So my first journey was to change those laws and to make things different. And I realized really, really super early on that I had a voice that the gay men in my community didn't have. People would open their doors and have me come in because they felt sorry for me. So whatever that was, I was going to use that to do the work that needed to be done. Steve and I, in 1999, I was diagnosed with breast cancer on top of the HIV. And it really looked like the end was coming. The doctor sat us down, said, take care of business. Do you have a will? And so Steve said to me, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I said, well, there needs to be something bigger than me left when I'm gone. And so with the help of tons of people in the Central Florida community, particularly Florida Southern folks, and at that time, the Rainbow Promise crowd, and just volunteers that were willing to step up, we started Friends Together. And Friends Together is now an international 501c. Originally, we brought 25 people together, and we sat in the Hollis room at Florida Southern College. It was very dramatic. Everybody cried and talked about me dying. And then the question I said to them is, what can we start that you will finish and continue when I'm not here? And Steve says, now, when you say opposites attract, I'm really good at marrying people that are very opposite of me. Anyone that knows Steve, remembers Steve, knows he was the great outdoorsman. He tracked the entire Appalachian Trail in the 70s before there were huts.
Wow.
Yeah, he was this be outside guy, and he says, I think we should have camps. And I'm like, camps? My idea of camping is the Sheraton Hotel. Um, there better be beds, there better be, whatever. And so we went about this journey of trying to start a program for families, whatever someone's family was, infected, affected by HIV. So gay couple, straight couple, single mom, single dad. And the bulk of our families in those early days were African American grandmothers and great aunts raising their grandbabies because their parents had already passed or weren't in the picture or whatever. And we couldn't find anywhere in Central Florida to let us rent their camp facilities. And when I say nowhere, I mean nowhere. Because as soon as they found out what we were, they were gone, right? But one day, randomly, Camp Wingman, which is an old Episcopal youth camp in Avon Park, said, have your programs here. And that's what we did. So we started, and for 10 years, we had 4 to 6 camps a year. Everything is free. Everybody was a volunteer. And we brought those kids to camp and helped them get plans to live, their whole families. The great news is that most of those kids are still alive today and are now really getting close to 30.
Wow.
And those were kids that we didn't think would go to elementary school, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the positive of the HIV story, I guess. But our work has definitely evolved over time. In 2004, Steve came home from work one day, came into the kitchen, put his briefcase down, and kissed me on top of the head. That was always a sign something was going to cost a lot of money, or he was going to say something I really didn't want to hear. In this case, it was both. He said, so I have an idea. We are going to go to Tanzania, Africa, and we are going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to raise money for Friends Together. Those of you listening, Kilimanjaro is the highest freestanding mountain in the world, 19,340 feet. You can see me. I'm not a little girl. Not happening. Plus, it's 20 degrees below zero at the top. So, but sure enough, found volunteers and we found support in the community. And yeah, off we went to Tanzania to climb the mountain and for me to deliver medical supplies. And so I'm going to tell this little story and then I'm going to stop talking so you can ask me questions. But you said you wanted stories. So this is really the story that's the foundation of everything that I do. Steve went up the mountain and he had turned 50 that year. So he was the only one in all the group to summit. And it took 8 days. And when he was on his way down from the mountain, I had been falling in love with these kids, right? The women. Tanzania is just, the rate of HIV in Tanzania at that time was close to 50%. I mean, in that area, it was just out incredible. And so when Steve came down the mountain, he hadn't shaved, hadn't had a shower, 8 days, growed a beard, and he was carrying tablets. I tell people they were tablets. He looked like Moses. They were spiral notebooks, but they were tablets. And they were the edicts about how we were going to spend our time, how we couldn't have come to this place and raised money for our families at home and look at these children and turn our backs and walk away. And so we hit the ground running the second we got home and, beginning our plans for the next trip. And so we got home in August. April, he was killed. And 2 weeks after he died, Garrett came home, and Garrett at the time was 13. He came into the kitchen and he said, Mom, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. I'm going to take Steve's ashes to the top.
Oh, wow.
And I said, Garrett, you are 13 years old. You Stone Mountain in Georgia is the only mountain you're climbing. He's like, no, Mom, I'm going to climb the mountain. And so he spent his entire 8th grade year training. And the next summer, sure enough, went back. We took all our volunteers. And at 14, at that time, he was the youngest non-African to summit killer and took Steve's ashes to the top. So
wow,
that's all our new work. And that's where we are.
That's impressive.
So,
wow.
Work continues, and it's, we are no longer just HIV. We're a wide spectrum of social justice issues. And we have programs here and we have programs there. And
let's start with some of the work that you're still doing there. So my introduction to you was, of course, through our friend Cathy Dobson, who has connected me to all the people, and I love Cathy so much. I'm so glad we're friends because we're just getting shit done, you know. And she had invited me into the Polk Teen Pregnancy Prevention Alliance group, and so at one of the meetings, she presented some information on Friends Together, and it was shocking to me to learn that students in our public schools are having to pay out of pocket for period products. And I'm going to get on my soapbox for a moment here, and I'm challenging people as a trans person to be inclusive of the trans community. My challenge to everyone is to stop using feminine hygiene products, because there are trans men who also have those body parts that function and need those supplies too, and they're men. So
we've actually kind of gone back to the original term, because it takes gender completely out of it, and that's mensy.
Yes.
And so it really, it actually makes it men's issues, but you know, it kind of takes the stigma of that away.
Yeah. So so I was just shocked to learn that our kids are having to pay for this stuff out of pocket. And, you know, we're a new organization, and we're looking to find ways to make some sort of difference with the very small group of people that we have at this point, but it's growing. And, you know, the small amount of cash that we have to operate with, and that's growing too. And so when we're just looking at things of like, okay, what are some like low hanging fruit things that we can jump in on and be a part of the solution to. And that was one of those things that's like, my God, that's a no-brainer. Our students shouldn't have to be paying for this stuff. But I tell you that story to tell you this story, right? My introduction was the reusable products that are being made and taken to Africa. So tell us about that and how that all works and how that got started.
So it's interesting. The two things really, really, truly tie together. So I've been going to Tanzania since 2005, right? So 16 years. I should be on a plane in the morning, which obviously I'm not. And so after having helped organizations build probably a dozen schools, about 6 years ago, I was standing in one of those schools and I was like, where are the girls? There's 80 boys and 3 girls, you know, where are the girls? And so by now, obviously I have great relationships with people there. And so finally I turned to one of my close friends there, Peace, and I'm like, why are the girls in this village not in school? And she said, because they haven't, you know, when they call it different words, but when they're on their period, there's no, you know, nothing for them to do. They sit in a hut. They sit in a hut and bleed. That's what basically happens. Okay. And I was like horrified. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you know, pads are extremely expensive. Like, we can't buy those. She says, I don't use those. I use cloth from my house. And this is a very educated, you know, woman. Never occurred to me, right? Never crossed my mind. And I've been doing relief work well before Tanzania in other countries. And I began to play that scenario through my head, right? Like, how many girls in third world countries across the world? So I got on a plane to come home, and I was with Toshoy. And I just, the whole ride, I was like, what are we going to do? How do we fix this? You cannot possibly take enough sanitary pads to make a difference, right? No way. I mean, a plane full isn't going to really make a difference, right? So I'm like, what do we do? What do we do? So I have several former Florida Southern students that have been in the Peace Corps. So I came home and immediately called both of them. I'm like, when you were in Africa, both of them were in Mozambique, what did you do? and they're like, well, the Peace Corps has some reusable sanitary pads. I'm like, okay, I need to see this. I
Mhm.
need to know what this looks like. So basically, I happen to have some right here to
Good.
show you. So we don't, we do have people that sew these here. And in the beginning, that was how we had to do it. But we have since built a tailoring school for HIV positive women. And then we hire these women to sew our
That's
pads. So
so
we
amazing.
have a full circle. This TAFCOM is a program that we partnered with for a long time. They have 400 plus minus HIV women and their children that they service. So we had originally helped build an elementary school for them. So now we've built a tailoring school and a clinic. We have our own clinic. And so we put the women to work in hopes of keeping the kids from becoming positive because they have to do what they have to do to make money, right?
Mhm.
And so it's become this full circle. So now we still have some parts that are sewed here in case anybody's a sewer. But the way a reusable sanitary pad works is this. This is a shield. You can see it has wings like an old-fashioned pad product would have had. And what happens is those wings actually have case gaps, um, which we can only buy here and we have to transport, which snap to the girl's panties. Okay, so you have this. Now, what happens is, depending on how heavy a period you're having, we have these cloths. Now, it's probably hard to tell on here, but they're doubled, so it's double thickness, right?
Yep.
So you fold this in threes and it inserts into the shield. Now, this is the cool thing. Well, your men listening are going, what the hell? But this is the cool thing for us using them, right? If you're having a normal flow day, you put in one cloth. If you're having a stronger flow or you're a plus size woman, you put in 2 or 3 cloths. We teach them how to fold them different ways so that it's not uncomfortable. And then what happens is during the day at school or at work or wherever you are, you just change the cloth. The shield stays in place. Now, if we were wearing these here, which, we all have worn them just to try them and to make suggestions on sizes and stuff. But if we were wearing these in our real life, we would change that whole thing.
Right.
That doesn't happen there. This, they change only when it gets dirty, and these they change regularly. Well, then our problem was, so we got the first batch of these made with women here sewing them, right? They came to me in the FedEx. I was so excited. I'm on Facebook Live doing this. I'm like, look what we got. We're going to have hundreds of these to take with us. And one of my former college students messages on Facebook Live, so where are they going to put the dirty one to get it home to wash it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they don't have purses. They don't have pocketbooks. They don't have, backpacks. So I say to the college kids watching, and there's a lot of them, girls, you got to figure this out because I got nothing, right? Immediately, my Jessica, who is now my daughter-in-law, says we need Ipsy bags. Well, I didn't have any idea what an Ipsy bag was, but I'm 54. So when I was a kid, I subscribed to RCA and got a 45 record
Yeah.
once a month.
Yeah.
These kids subscribe to Ipsy. And once a month, they get for $10 this bag in the mail, different ones. They're really cute, super cute. And it's full of makeup products. And so guess what? Sorority girls, high school girls, 50 of these different bags under their mom's counter in the bathroom, right? So we put out the word and they just started flying in, like all these Ipsy bags. So this was wonderful. And then, because, my volunteers are way smarter than me, and one volunteer says, well, that's great. And those will be perfect to carry clean ones in. But dirty, some of them are lined, so that's okay. But a lot of them are cloth. So she says, I got a better idea. So she's, a lot of my volunteers are hippies, and she's a young mom, but she uses cloth diapers. And she had diaper bags that were made out of this type of material that contain smell, so it doesn't get sneaky, but also are water resistant. And so this is what our volunteers locally across the country sew for us. Joann's regularly has this kind of fabric on sale super cheap. And we found a pattern where there's no snaps, no buttons, no nothing. So there's nothing to break, right? So now what happens is $10 supplies a girl with pads for a year, pays our student to sew them, and gets they get 4 shields, 12 cloths, and an empty bag and one of those. That's a kit, basically. And $10, they last longer than a year usually for most of them, but we say a year because the snaps wear out, right? Sure. But basically $10 keeps a young woman in school or work for an entire year.
What an insanely great thing. At that such a low cost. I love so much about this because there's skill, there's education, the trades piece. This is a sustainable thing. I mean, you could fly a plane across wherever and drop pallets full of disposable products that would just get thrown out into the environment
and no way to break down.
Yes.
And the other piece of this is that what happened was, okay, so this started getting a lot of international attention. We get very little we get a lot more international attention than we do. It is what it is, whatever. But we had a story done that had gotten picked up. And so teacher friends of mine here start messaging me about the issue with kids in schools here.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, do you have any of, I'm like, there is no way an 8th grade girl at Eagle Lake it's not happening. But how do we change that and make them part of this and help them at the same time? Mm-hmm. So what we've done is we take all the Ipsy bags that come in that aren't lined, which are a lot of them. They don't have to be Ipsy, any, cosmetic bag, whatever. And then we stuff them with regular pads. And we take those to teachers in schools that we work with. We give them to give out to the girls when they have a period at school, right? So they get them free and they're not going and paying $1 in the office. But at the same time, that teacher is expected to do 5 minutes of education with the girls, about why these are important and about collecting these to make a difference for other women around the world, right? So it became this way to do education about the fact that we may not feel blessed, but we we are awful lucky to have been born where we've been born, yep. Right? And so it become kind of this history and social studies lesson as well. But I'll, kind of the thing together really has made a full circle thing. And our biggest goal is for other people to copy what we do. Yep. There's so many Western organizations that have programs in, Honduras and in Guatemala and in other parts of Africa that all have the same problems, and they've not been addressed, right? They very rarely, because that's on the bottom of the list. I get lists all the time where people are volunteering for organizations and they're taking school supplies and paying for uniforms. And I'll write back and I'm like, so do you pay for pads? And they're like, no, we pay for uniforms. Well, a uniform doesn't do you any good if 8 days a week, a month, you can't go to school.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. I love it so much. April in the chat says, I love that. Becca said about your story, I'm in tears. Such a beautiful story. And Becca is a newfound seamstress in the wake of COVID. We've been making masks, and April is a maker too. So we might be able to find you some
Woohoo.
more helpers here.
And we, by the way, with the mask piece, so when COVID started, the area we work in Tanzania is basically the base of Mount Kilimanjaro region. And it's sustained, even though the out areas are super poor, it's still sustained only by tourism, right?
Mhm.
Because Westerners come to climb Kili or go on a safari in the Serengeti. And
And
so,
they're not now.
no, there are
Yeah.
zero international flights. There
Yeah.
are zero anything. So our girls at the school, COVID hadn't made a presence until now. Like it's just starting to be there. So what we did was we took all the fabric we had at the school at the time, and we got patterns for masks from the CDC, and we had the girls sew masks for all our families and all the children, the children and stuff. And at first, I was like, are they going to understand enough to wear these? Because when you don't have TV, it's
Mhm.
not like somebody's just telling you this thing is coming in the air, but you're not seeing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And no. But it's been amazing. They're wearing them, they're using them, and we have the girls wearing them in school right now in social distancing. We've moved our sewing machines outside under a tent, and because nothing's electric, so as long as we
Mhm.
can shade, we're okay. And but it's a whole nother thing. I can sit here and be bitchy, which I am, about being home for the duration of vaccine,
Stuck here, right?
stuck
Yeah.
here, but I'm stuck here with a big TV and
Right. Mhm.
whatever. So
I don't know, but I think knowing that probably makes it worse for you. Like knowing that, oh, I'm stuck here with all the, pleasures of America, and I would much rather be helping people who don't. Like I
it does.
completely get that. Okay, so that's just one piece of the thing that you do. Talk about some of the other things. You kind of mentioned a little bit about medical programs and that kind of stuff. What all else are you doing there?
So basically, I'll finish the Steve story by adding to that and explaining what happened. So, in 2010, my son went off to USF, and my daughter was already off at college, and the economy tanked, right? So it became clear that our financial donations were going to go away fast, and so we made a conscious decision to just send money and not take the trips to Tanzania. So the money we would have spent on our airline tickets, the money we would have
Mhm.
spent on, all of that, just send, because no one's going to be supporting what we're doing necessarily. So for a few years, that's what we did. And then about 2 weeks before Garrett was supposed to graduate from USF, he called me and said, Mom, let's have dinner. And so by then I'm living in Fort Myers, and we eat at Sonny's on the north side in Lakeland. That's our place. And so I'm on the way to Sonny's, and I get this call, and he's like, "Hey, Mom, let's meet at Buffalo Wild Wings instead." So the mom and me, I'm already hinky about, why is my child calling me for dinner in the middle of the week, and all I can think of, I mean, let's just be honest. Everybody that knows me knows I thought, oh my God, the girlfriend is pregnant. I mean, like,
Mhm.
that's the only thing I could think of. So I get to meet my son at the restaurant at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I go in and I sit down and I'm like, it's okay, whatever it is, we can, we'll handle it. It's, whatever. And he's like, Mother, what is the matter with you? And I'm like, just tell me. And he's like, he reaches down and he pulls up Steve's tablets from Tanzania. And
Mm.
he laid them on the desk and he said, Mom, I don't want to go to grad school. It's time for us to go back to Africa and do what we do. And so with that, it was time to start going back, right? So our first trip back, that's when I really discovered the whole pad piece. Um, it was like, okay, we have to stop. If we're really going to do this, we need to create our own programs that we can control what's happening and build a sustainable program that we can manage no matter what tragedy could happen. Now, I wasn't thinking COVID, obviously,
Sure.
but there's always going to be something, right? So we need something that we know we can support no matter what the next crisis is. And so that's when we sat down with TAFCOM and said, okay, let's start. Let's start with your kids having a place to go to school, So we finished out their elementary school, and then build the tailoring school. So we've done it step by step. So 3-4 years into having this tailoring school, what we realized was that TAFCOM has these 400 women, right? All of them aren't going to go to the tailoring school. We have a microloan program. We have this other stuff. But we realized they were dying, not of HIV necessarily. They were dying of really simple illnesses that an antibiotic would have taken care of. But they have no money for medical care, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we decided we needed to build our own clinic. And so without any really thinking it through, I just looked at Jahida, who is our nurse practitioner who goes with me every year. And I'm like, hey, we're building a clinic. That's it. We're building a clinic. It's going to happen. So we built a clinic attached to our school. And we see the families infected in that area. And sometimes they're not necessarily TAFCOM people. We staff it, obviously, when we're there with ourselves, but we hire a nurse to run clinic for us that is Tanzanian that lives there. So she's always there. And then we have made a lot of friends over the years of other Western groups that go for whatever reason. A lot of clean water folks travel through Tanzania, climb the mountain, that stuff. But they all have medical people that travel with them doing their fundraising, right? So they have a doctor, they have a nurse or whatever. So our ultimate goal, which we're not there yet, we were getting close before COVID, but our ultimate goal is to at least once a month have the clinic staffed by a volunteer Westerner for a couple of days, so that there's that presence too. But we treat all the things that we are capable of treating, and we get them to the hospital. An X-ray. Now think of this: people don't have an X-ray for a broken bone because they can't do it. $5.
Wow.
An EKG, $5. So we're able to provide basically our clinic, and they get pantry. They get beans, rice, and oil when they come, because you can't take medicine if you have no food, right? But they get enough beans, rice, and oil for the family when they come. But we basically can run the clinic for all 400 people and make sure people have the medicines they need for about $600, $650 a month. Pre-COVID. COVID's costing us a little more.
Sure.
But, think about that. 400 people getting care that they may need.
It's almost like we're getting overcharged for healthcare in America or something. But
you think.
what do I know?
So our ultimate goal, because people ask me, what is your ultimate goal? And this is it. I said this to you before we started. I was born to flower children that fell out of the 60s. So I was born doing social justice before people did social justice. That's been my whole life, and it is what it is. But I would go on these other trips, places, whether it was Haiti or Guatemala or Honduras or wherever, and I would feel good while I was there. We took whatever, and we did whatever. But the minute I got on the plane to come home, I knew that in 2 weeks, nothing would have changed. Everything was back. The kids were hungry again, whatever it was. And so what was different for me about Tanzania, and for Steve, because he had done most of his missions work over the years had been in the Dominican Republic. And what was different for both of us was that when we were there on our very first trip, we realized no one was starving to death, because Tanzania is on the equator. You may not have a wide selection of food, but you can walk down the road and you can pull a sweet potato out of the ground.
Mm.
You can pull a banana off a tree. We knew if our kids had food in their stomach, we could build on that. Yep. And make a difference in the education, make a difference, a tangible difference. And we also knew that we had to keep it in a small enough region that, because people call us and want us to go all over, but I don't have the money and the resources. So if I spread that so thin, I'm never going to change the quality of some being's life. Yep. And so we stay focused on our programs that we have and being able to build on Maslow's law, and make that difference. And that's what will ultimately keep us sustainable even through COVID. So.
Absolutely. Well, there was one thing that you just mentioned that I want to go back on, and I think it's that I've figured out why we all get along so damn well. And it's, you said, without thinking it through, and then you just jumped in and did the thing. That's exactly how I work. That's how Cathy called me at 6 o'clock in the morning one day and says, "Hey, I've got this crazy idea." And apparently I've become an enabler for her and said, "Great, let's do it."
Let's do it.
Oh, so
it's true. It's about being able to take that leap. And I use the word faith, not meaning God, even faith in the universe, faith in the ability that people are good and somebody's going to come to your rescue. At Florida Southern, you'll still see people in Lakeland wear these shirts because all the years I was there, our t-shirt said, "Think it through," meaning be the boss of your brain, think about it, jump, do it, do these things. And, it's true. Sometimes you have to let go of whatever the expectation is and just make the leap.
Yep, for sure. And I guess it should probably go without saying, but one of the, I look at your website, and I look at, the goals that you have listed, right? Clinic staff and medicine, supplies for the tailoring program, equipment for the tailoring, the reusable sanitary pads. I don't see anywhere on here, build a church.
Yeah, no.
I see schools and medical and truly life-changing things that will that day make a difference in the lives of these people in a profound way that as atheists we often say, what is it Dan Barker says, nothing fails like prayer, and so we want to do that. I know so many people that do mission work. And a lot of times it is okay, well, we're going to go do Bible study with you.
Food for Jesus is what we call.
Yep. There you go.
So this, I can't usually tell this story different places, but this is the perfect platform to tell it. So I'm going to tell it.
Great.
Okay. So our very first trip to Tanzania, it was all gay folk and me. And, a couple people kind of religious. I mean, again, I was brought up Methodist. It's that, but everybody on the very liberal spectrum, mm-hmm. Right? And so the day they came down from the being on the mountain and stuff, we had planned this big celebration for all the porters and everybody at this local restaurant. And so I was getting things ready beforehand, and I walked into this beautiful fabric shop. And so a lot of the businesses in the region where we are owned by Indians. But they were born Indian descent, but they were born in Tanzania. There's a huge Hindu population because they were indentured servants to the British. Mm-hmm. And so there's a large population, right, in that area. And so this guy, oh my God, the most beautiful fabric stuff you've ever seen. And I wear a Ganesh pendant, and a Ganesh is a Hindu pendant. It's an elephant. It's the remover of obstacles. And he saw my pendant and he was like, "You're a white lady with a," so we start talking and he offered me some tea. So I'm sitting there talking with him, and this woman comes in, very clearly very poor,
Mhm.
local woman. And he says, "Stay here, I'll go get the fabric." He goes in the back and he comes out with his fabric, and it caught my eye, but I wasn't really looking at it. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't processing. But it was this beautiful purple and white fabric, and it had whatever on it. And he cut it and he gave it to her. And when she held it up, I saw it, and it had the Virgin Mary,
Mhm.
like this purple thing with the thing inside of it. And I was like, what the hell? And so I'm like clearly flustered.
Mm.
And so she leaves, and I said to him, you have to explain this to me. Like, I don't understand. And he's like, I can't now, come back. And so I was like, I'll be back, right?
Yeah, I got to
What
know the end of
time?
this story.
What time? Because I'm coming back. And because there were customers in the store.
Yeah.
So I came back, and he took me to his back room. And in his back room, he had all this Food for Jesus material,
Mhm.
whatever. I can't, whatever.
Mhm.
Christian material, African print material with Christian Judeo stuff on it.
Yep.
And I'm like, what? And he's like, so um, there are two religious groups that have moved into this area and own most of the businesses.
Mm.
And if you don't say you believe in Jesus, you can't get a job there.
Wow.
And when I tell you I was
Mm.
horrified, did not describe it. And I was like, oh, what? And he's like, no, I mean, that's how you get fed. So people, people wear,
Mhm.
I'm telling you, I was about to, I just couldn't believe it. And so there is all over Africa, and that's what it's called, Food for Jesus.
Mhm.
It's in Western groups come in, and that's what they do. They basically buy the businesses, say they're helping,
Yep.
which I'm not saying they're not helping by giving jobs and
Sure.
food,
Sure.
because jobs and food are necessary. But when you say you can't work here unless you
Mhm.
believe what I believe, you set up a whole nother thing, right? So at the time when we first started going, I was working at Florida Southern, so tons of our volunteers were, coming from that base. And so the first rule was, there is no, you can take your own Bible. You, like, if you read your Bible at night, that's great, that's fine, but we do not proselytize.
Mhm.
And this is missions work, because it's changing people's lives and hearts, but it's not religious work. And the base of everything we do, whether it's stateside or, in Tanzania, or our hurricane relief projects, or, whatever. That's the bottom line. There's tons of people that want to do good work, but their choice is to do it with a church,
Yes.
or to find themselves
You
wherever.
you just set up four wonderful segues, and I'm going to take each one of them. One of them is
You thought you were going to bed,
that's a
didn't you?
nah, I'm good. That's a big part of how It Takes a Village sort of started, was that we had a lot of volunteers, but they're food banks, and all of them around here are religious based, and that's
Mhm.
fine. But
Right.
for people who do not belong to that particular religion or church, it's easy to be made to feel an outsider, and or that they see you as a project to convert. Um, another springboard. It frustrates the hell out of me. So all of this is so applicable even to here and now, because there are so many food pantries and soup kitchens and shelters that, well, you're welcome to come have a meal here, but we're going to pray first. Or you can stay at our shelter, but you're going to need to study the Bible with one of our counselors. And I'm sorry, we shouldn't be taking advantage of people at one of their darkest times in their life. Yeah, and in order to win souls for Jesus or whatever. Even when I was a believer, I grew up in the Christian church, and I thought it was ridiculous that we were we're gonna go to a third world nations to build churches to for what? We can't help people. And in my mindset then it was, well, you just help people and the love of Jesus will show through you and that will be enough. That's all it takes, right? Oh no. And then the third piece is the frustration about like, oh, you can work here, but you have to this. There are efforts in, and you may know this may be for the benefit of our audience, but there are efforts in this country, primarily at the state level, to enshrine religious liberty as a right to discriminate in state law. It's called Project Blitz. It's by the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation. I do a whole hour and a half long talk on it. If anybody wants to hear it, it's on YouTube. You're welcome to look me up. But that idea of, Hobby Lobby doesn't want to provide contraceptive care to their employees because of their deeply held religious beliefs, right? It's here. This isn't just a thing that we've, taken out to the world in our attempt to conquer for Jesus or whatever. Like, this is an effort that's happening here and now, and we have to watchdog this stuff, because if you don't, the way that
they slip it in.
Yeah, the way the gerrymandering and the voter suppression and all of those things are going right now, it makes it real hard for those of us, if we're not paying attention, to come together and stop that kind of stuff. So, yeah, man. So what else do you want to talk about? It Takes a Village? Let's talk about It Takes a Village.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you get involved into that?
Roped. So,
Kathy called me at 4:30 in the morning.
Pretty much, yes. So anyone that knows me knows I don't sleep, and then if you text me at 2 a.m., I'm probably going to answer, and all that stuff. So yeah. So basically, yeah, I think she probably called me in the very beginning to run the ideas by me, and even though I don't live in Polk County anymore, Central Florida will always be home. I'm a native Floridian. I grew up in North Florida, but Central Florida is always going to be home for me, and it's going to be the home of my grandbaby. So I'm obviously going to be there a lot still. So, I have no money, but I have contacts, and that's kind of the thing. And I'm so proud of her for taking that leap and going, okay, COVID, we don't have time to have a strategy meeting, to do a survey, to see what needs to be done. We just need to do it. Okay, maybe we'll make a mistake or two along the way, but we just need to start it and just to do it. And I'm sure she probably told you that she called me one day about a food bank issue where you guys thought you were going to get some food, and I was like, they ain't ever going to give you food. Not going to happen. As soon as they found out who Friends Together really was in the early days, a long time ago, that food went away, and the same thing's going to happen, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't want to burst your bubble, but you just move on, because you're going to find allies and you're going to find obstacles. You push the obstacles away and you just go on, because the same people sit at the same tables in the same meeting rooms. It hasn't changed in 20 years, right? So you make your own meeting room and your own table, and you bring the people, you leave their table alone and you just move on. And that's what you have to do. And so I'm super proud of the stuff you guys are doing and getting this food out, and, just basic things that people need. I think so many people, and people listening to you right now, that are consider themselves enlightened beings. Okay. We are enlightened folk. But people don't realize, even if somebody's getting some food stamps, you can't buy Pampers with that. You can't buy this with that. You can't buy that with that. One of our big Friends Together programs that people just can't understand at all is I'm always begging on Facebook for people to save their hotel soaps and shampoos. And they're like, what are you doing with those? Well, a few years ago, probably close to 10 years ago now, but under the Scott administration, this little quirk happened in one of the laws. And so domestic violence shelters and stuff aren't able, out of their general revenue money, to purchase shampoo and soap and stuff. That's like going to a state meeting and getting free food doesn't happen anymore.
Mm.
It falls in that same category, right? Well, if you're running from an abusive relationship and you got your kids in tow, you probably hadn't thought to grab your toothbrush and your shampoo,
Yep. Sure.
right? So it's these little basic things. You can't buy it with food stamps. You can't buy Pampers with food stamps. You can't. So there's all these little things that even in the best of times people need, but in these times when you're a waitress and you've laid off for 3 months and stuff, those things are as important as the food in your stomach, right? And so what you guys are doing just excites me. It makes me super happy, and I'm glad to be a little bitty part of it.
When I first heard, the description of, like, I mean, the first call I got was like, hey, I've got like 25 families, they need laundry soap. And we were like, duh, that's easy. And the next day we had it. Like, okay, we can take care of that. Like, we don't have a ton of money, but we have some funds set aside for stuff like this. We'll just take care of that, no big deal. And then it's frustrating because you think about the wealth inequality in our country and how easily tonight we could solve the problem of poverty, hunger, homelessness could be gone tonight if we just did it, right? If the people who could do it would just do it. And so, I hear about these people and they're farm workers who are not working because nobody's working. We're out, right? We're all waitresses. These are folks who are otherwise were working to make ends meet, and now they can't because there's a pandemic going on, and we have stripped the social safety net down to its skivvies that it won't help them either. And then you have people who can't drive, they can't travel to a traditional food bank or other service to get the things that they need. So what the hell do you do? And when we sit down and let's take it to them. Right? Like, mind-blowing. Of course that's what you do. And why haven't we been doing that all along? Right? Like, it's just, it fills my heart to just be a part of that and know that that these folks are really struggling during this pandemic, which, by the way, is not getting better. It's getting worse, and we're probably headed for another shutdown. And so stay tuned for all of that.
I think our governor's an idiot. The problem is I don't think we're going to shut down because he wants the GOP convention. So, and not for nothing, but as long as we're going to talk about that for just a second, I do, again, for those of you enlightened folks listening, I had a text just before we started. So, the numbers in Immokalee are just off the charts, right? And that's what he keeps touting on the TV about, the farm workers and stuff. There's ice vehicles out all over Immokalee today. So now you're going to scare people not to go get tested.
Sure.
That could be sick because you're going to pick them up if they show up somewhere.
It's
don't test and we won't have numbers.
I'm just so mad, Cathy. I'm just so mad. The disease is selfishness. It's greed. It's
greed.
It's a lack of compassion and empathy. And these are all so simple. So simple. And that's like, a lot of times we get asked like, oh, so you're an atheist. Great. Now what? Like, what do you do with that? A lot of people go through this phase of, we were raised in the church, and then we've come to the conclusion that there's not a good enough reason to believe in this thing anymore. And then we go through an angry atheist phase where maybe we're mad at the, having been brainwashed as children or whatever, right? And then it's the doctrine that's propping up the racism and slavery, like, that's in the book. It's there, and the patriarchy and like all of this stuff, and you're just getting mad at it, right? And you spend some time in this angry atheist phase, and then hopefully we can shepherd people into humanism and like, okay, take that energy that you have and let's go change the world. Yeah, let's
Exactly.
go do something with it. So I love that. I mean, we've been organized for like a year and a half, and I'm so thrilled with the people that have gathered around this community and this idea that want to do some good and make changes in people's lives. And that's really what it's all about. And that's what you're doing with your organization, and that's what we're doing with It Takes a Village. And it makes so much sense for us all to be this little weird family that I love so much.
That's it. You you make a difference where you can, and you do it by Steve and I used to do this program, and it was called Families Created a Crisis. And it was the idea that in the early days of HIV, families looked really different, right?
Yeah.
Normally, it was lesbian women marrying gay men to give them health insurance and all this other stuff. Mine and Steve's was unique to everything. But the idea is family, whoever your family is, together can change the world, and that's what you guys are doing. That's what That's what everyone is. Just if you want to, it's like my day job is put in a plug for that. My day job is currently public health for AHEC, but I'm teaching smoking cessation classes and doing them on Zoom, tobacco cessation. And I said to this young man yesterday, I'm like, you can't think I'm never going to smoke again ever in my whole entire life. You think I can do it until the 4th of July, or I can do it for today. It's the same thing when you're trying to make a difference in the world. Okay, no, we can't change the racist pigs that were, sitting in that place in Tulsa the other day. We
Hmm.
can't, but we can make the ripple in our own communities. And by doing that, we make the change. And, that's one step at a time.
Yeah,
That's,
absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to put a pin in it for now. We can talk anytime. You're welcome
I,
back anytime you'd
I
like.
too. And if anybody wants to follow us on Facebook, they can follow me at Cathy Robinson Pickett or Friends Together with a hyphen in it. And starting tomorrow, we will begin our virtual trip. So I'll be doing Facebook Lives that would be like we were there, talking about the project we would have been doing that day, or those kinds of things. But our big one will be on the 4th of July, because we always do a gigantic education event that day and celebrate my still being alive. And this will be number 36.
Yay.
So if anybody wants to join in, we'd love to have them start following us.
Absolutely. And then the website is friendstogether.org. If people want to support you, would you prefer financial donations? Do you want people to reach out to you if they can help craft and
If they want to
sew and
sew, reach out to me. We have patterns, financial donations. So, you know, it, money is obviously in the time of COVID, money is our thing. So we have our accounts are set up where people can, pledge $10 a month if they want for pads for a woman, for a girl, or, we have $10, 25 and $50 a month, donations they can do, and automatic bill pay, or their employer or whatever, or they can make a one-time donation on the website or Facebook, or send us your pennies. Our big campaign is always, for, I do want to mention this real quick, for our local pads for the girls here in Florida, is Change for Change. So we ask people to get their family, get their organization, whoever, to save their change for 1 week, or however long they want to do it, and that's how we buy the pads that we give out in the school systems. So if anybody goes, hey, I don't want to do Africa stuff, I want to help here, we need as much help with that as we do with our Africa programs too. So
for sure. And check with your employer if if they're willing to do a change for change program at work. I know our work does, and they change they change out the different
yes,
beneficiaries, every month or so. And yeah, so definitely ask about it for sure.
awesome. Well,
Cool.
thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for doing this. This was a great time. I'm so glad we got to talk.
Yay.
All right.
All right.
We'll be in touch again soon, and uh Absolutely love what they're doing at Friends Together. Again, that was Cathy Robinson Pickett, of founder and director of Friends Together. Before we wrap up today, I do want to mention that the Freethought in Florida and the Atheist Community of Polk County, we do now have set up a Patreon account. So if you'd like to support the atheist community and the ongoing production of these programs, you can do that at patreon.com/Polk Atheists is the link to get to that. And there's different contribution levels that you can sign up for. We're going to plan to build that out as we go. But you can do that. Freethought in Florida is also now available as a podcast. We're waiting on Apple Podcasts to go through the approval process. Google Play just approved it, so it should be showing up on some of the major podcatcher apps. And if not, you can go to our website, polkatheists.org, and get the direct link to the RSS feed and just manually add it into whatever podcast player that you are using now. And again, you can go to polkatheists.org to find out all the things about the ACPC and make a donation. Follow us at Polk Atheists on all the social medias. And once again, before we wrap up here, just another big thank you to Cathy Robinson Pickett of the Friends Together and just the wonderful work that they're doing. I'm really glad we got a chance to learn about that, and look forward to talking to her again soon. So everybody remember the 3 most important things. Don't touch anything, wash your hands, and wear your mask. Be safe. We'll see you again soon.